Welcome, honored guests. If you're listening, you have landed on a Toastmaster-inspired podcast. I'm your host, Bernie Martin, and I hope to have some interesting conversations with some interesting people. Join us as we deep dive into some of the topics that people are passionate about. I'm so glad you chose to visit with us on Passionate Pursuits. All right, this is Bernie. I wanted to say thank you again for joining us tonight for the Passionate Pursuit podcast series. Tonight I have a guest that I've known for several years. We go to church together. We've been involved in Christian ministry called Tres Dias together. And Jenny offered to come on board and be a part of this series. We are on the phone. Jenny Godwin, I'm going to give you just a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do professionally. Anything you want to tell us, just hobbies or about your life.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm very appreciative to get to be a part of this project. And I was trying to think of how long we've known each other, and I'm thinking, more than 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome. But I am currently a director of human resources for local government in Tennessee. And for fun hobbies, I enjoy getting to work on writing, getting to encourage others, and trying to spend time with family and friends whenever time does allow. Seems to be fewer and farther in between these days, but it's a good time.
Awesome. So you responded to my SOS call on Facebook for people who had some topic that they could speak about, that they were passionate about, but that they could speak about for at least 10 minutes or so. And you responded to that. Tell me a little bit about what you had in mind for your passionate pursuit topic.
I immediately thought of the phrase keep moving forward, because people get so caught up, myself included, in life, different situations or scenarios that you just feel like you're stuck and you just can't get anywhere due to your circumstances that are surrounding you or your own choices, consequences, whatever the case may be. And one of my biggest passions in life is getting to encourage people to keep moving forward and to stop letting excuses limit them.
Which is easy to do. It's easy to find excuses, but it's also easy to try to justify when we're caught in the mully grubs. Give ourselves a reason to be there.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said earlier, you're only stuck if you stay. I love that. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what it means?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually talking with my counselor a week or so ago about this. Big encourager of counseling, therapy,
awesome,
mental health. I told her one of my biggest pet peeves is when people get so caught in lamenting and griping and moaning and complaining about things without doing something to change their situation. And I just looked at her and said, "You're only stuck if you stay." And she immediately instructed me to write that down. But with that, it just really struck a chord of when we allow ourselves to just sit and wallow in our self-pity or to tread water. That's a visual that I keep having, is when we allow ourselves to just stay in this, we get comfortable. And then we look back 10 years later and we're still in the same spot, when we could have done so much to encourage other people along the way. We could have changed the world one life at a time, but we were so caught up in our own circumstances and our own lack of meeting goals or whatever the case may be, that we let life go on without doing anything to move with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't really want to intentionally put you on the spot, but can you share an example just for the sake of breaking that down a little bit? Do you have something in your own life that you can say, this is where I was stuck, but I made the decision to get up and dust myself off and keep moving?
Sure. Well, I have struggled with depression off and on since I was in middle school. And I did hit a dark spot in my 20s that I won't really go into too much detail at this time, but it was one of those things that I had to truly see life for what it was, which is a gift. And now, fast forward all these years later, that I've seen what depression can truly do to people, and from my own personal life, and just seeing how I go through what I call the funk or the fog, usually in January every year. And because that's when my depression had hit its lowest point all those years ago. And it's one of those things to where I go into January actively aware of the fact that it's going to suck, for lack of a better term. And it is going to be a hard time for me typically. But I choose to see it for what it is and identify the problem and the fact that depression doesn't define me. And I have to, I hold myself accountable with friends that know that that's usually my hardest month of the year. And they check in on me. They make sure that I'm okay. Yes. They watch me to make sure that my moods or mode or whatever you want to call it are healthy. And they're not afraid to call me out real quick if they think that I'm slipping into a dark spot. And so it's making the choice each day to just win the day and to keep moving forward. Because if I don't keep moving forward, I'm going to fall back into old habits that I know I was made for more than.
Yes, that's awesome. And you touched on a super important point, and one that's very close to my heart. And that is just having those people in your life that can provide that accountability. Those ride or die people who know everything about you. Because just on the outside, if somebody was looking at Jenny Godwin, you see joy, you see laughter, you see sequins, you see sparkle, you see all of these things. You have no idea what's really going on inside your heart, right? And so most people need to understand that importance of having those people in your life who know everything about you. And I know sometimes in the case of a marriage, that's going to be a spouse, or if you have, a close family, it's going to be family. But sometimes for single people, that can be a little more difficult because you actually have to be intentional to have those friends around you. What advice can you give somebody who maybe struggles with getting that accountability, that safety network in place?
Be vulnerable. Vulnerability is absolutely terrifying because it opens us up to so much potential heartbreak and disappointment. However, just because it opens us up to that doesn't mean that's what it's going to bring. We definitely need to be careful with who we are our true selves with in that regard, because you don't want to just tell everybody you're junk. We all have these layers of the onion that we want to peel back, and we want to be, cautious with our stories and things of that nature that are close to our hearts and things that we struggle with. But truly being willing to be vulnerable and trusting that the people that you do life with, if you don't do life with people, find some. Make new friends. Don't be afraid to get to know new people. If you're a Christian and a believer, find a church if you haven't, because there are people that I know that will call me out, not in a bad way, but they will ask me where I've been if they don't see me. And those types of relationships are so pivotal when it comes to life and depression and just trying to truly be vulnerable to other people. And if you don't know how to make friends or how to truly find your tribe or your group or your ride or dies, then talk to a counselor. Those counselors that are in our lives and therapists, they're there to help us with coping mechanisms and trying to learn life skills to get to the point where we don't necessarily need them. They're never going to work their way out of a job.
Right. So. The end result, the goal is for healing. And I love that. And I also love what you said earlier when you were talking about how when you're coming up on January and you know that that's going to be a difficult time and you run into it full force. And there's wisdom in that. When you know that you have a certain struggle in a certain area and being able to prepare for that, what does that look like for you? What are some of the things that maybe you do to compensate for that negative time that you see coming?
It starts with a lot of prayer, as cliche as that may sound. at times. It's definitely something that I never want to go into unprepared for. And being a believer, I want to make sure that I am equipped to fight that funk and fight the fog of depression, what that looks like in my life, and how I know when I just feel this weight. I definitely, when I feel it coming on, because it's sometimes a physical feeling that I truly feel. I, will talk to my poor people and say, hey, I feel it coming on. And I hate that. I truly do. Mm-hmm. But they remind me of things. My mom is my very best friends at this point in my life, and I'm so thankful for her. She tries to remind me on days that I am frustrated with, could be where I am in life or something I'm dealing with at work. And she's like, you know what, on those days that you're feeling down, remind yourself of this. And I'll go through and I'll look at the list of things that she's encouraged me to write before, the list of the people and the things that I'm grateful for. Because I know how blessed I am and how fortunate I am to have the people in my life that I have that truly do show love and show joy and spunk and bring that fun and freedom and laughter that I so desperately long for. Mm-hmm. And I swear I'm like a 4-year-old on the inside with always wanting to laugh and cut up and see all things sparkly. Mm-hmm. But it's truly making the choice to see the sparkle in those days and trying to seek that out on those days of the gloom and doom.
Mm-hmm. So for people like me, I can sometimes be a little dense, I think, when it comes to emotional needs of other people. I'm very well in tune with my own. But what types of things from outside of your accountability group, your safe group, what can just the average person do that would be an encouragement to you? How can we be more sensitive to emotional needs?
I think watching demeanor of people, whenever you're asking someone how they are, truly saying, okay, when they say, oh, I'm fine, thanks, how are you? And trying to be sensitive to the fact that sometimes people have, we all have hard seasons or rough days or whatever the case may be. And sometimes just watching a person and saying, are you really okay? And if it's somebody that you interact with somewhat regularly, just truly trying to see them for who they are and where they are. Mm-hmm. And trying to be, mindful of those interactions. Or if you haven't seen somebody in a while that you usually see somewhere, whether it's at work, church, a sporting event, or anything like that, just saying, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, I've missed you. Or I miss you when you're gone. Mm-hmm. I think back of, a time that I was traveling a good bit, and that one of the kids at church had said something about that one time. Those types of things, they mean a lot to some people. Granted, I'm a words of affirmation and physical touch love language person. Mm-hmm. So the words of affirmation really go a long way for me. Whereas somebody else that struggles with depression, it could be something totally different. Acts of service, quality time, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But I know for me personally, it's when people truly see me for where I am and they pick up on the fact that my demeanor is different. Mm-hmm. Not that I expect them to do that all the time because it's not their job, but when people truly see you for where you are and who you are, it goes a long way to let you feel seen.
Yes. Yes, I think early on, that was probably one of the things I remember that could wound me very easily is when people would say, how are you? And then when you try to answer, they're already halfway down the hall.
Yes.
And so it's like you don't really get a chance to interact, and that just says, well, they didn't really want to know how you are. And I know Joe Fleming from church, and this is one thing that we started doing years ago, is we would ask each other how we were, but then we would preface that answer with, how are you really? I really do want to know. Tell me how you are. And so we have this level of honesty that I wish we could pass along to every person in our circle. How are you really? How are you doing?
Yes.
And, to really listen. Well, Jenny, this has been awesome. I thank you again for being willing to come and share with us. But before we wrap up this segment, because our time is actually about up, but you also write a blog.
I do.
Is that out there for the public to read?
It is.
Why don't you tell us what that address is and how we can find that?
I would love to. It is www.jennygodwin.com. That's JENNYGODWIN, all one word.
Awesome. I would encourage anyone is so inclined to go and check it out. Jenny's got some very insightful blog posts, and I love reading and I love hearing your heart. Jenny, I appreciate you being here. And I'm just going to say one thing, girl, sparkle on. You are amazing.
Bernie, thank you so much for this opportunity and just for what you do to encourage other people. You make a difference day in and day out, more than you know.
Well, I appreciate that so much. For now, we'll say goodbye, and I hope you have a great evening. Thank you so much.
You too.